The Triarch Council ship Serenity of Patience drifted at the edge of the Sol exclusion zone, its sensor arrays extended like the antennae of a nervous insect. For 127 Earth years, the barrier had held, perfect, unbroken, a monument to Council engineering and their absolute dominance over the primitive world it contained. Maintenance drone T-7 did not think. It did not feel. It executed its programmed sweep along Grid 47 Alpha, cataloging energy fluctuations within the quarantine field. The barrier was a marvel, a spherical shell of compressed dimensional frequency that rendered anything inside it incapable of interacting with the space beyond. No ship could cross. No signal could penetrate. The humans had tried everything in those first decades. Their missiles, their radiation pulses, their desperate mathematical screams aimed at the stars. All of them had splashed against the barrier like rain against a mountain. On its 1,000th sweep, T-7 registered an anomaly. The drone's processors identified it, dismissed it, identified it again, and then flagged it for higher review. A structural irregularity in the barrier's interior surface. Not a crack, not a weakness, something stranger. Something was altering the barrier's energy profile from the inside, not pushing outward, shaping. The drone transmitted its data to the Serenity of Patience and continued its patrol, unaware that it had just discovered the first crack in the Council's greatest achievement. And crack was the wrong word. It was more like a door beginning to form where no door should exist. Commander Thalvox received the report 4 cycles later. His species measured intelligence by patience, and he had cultivated that virtue for 600 years. He did not panic. He did not dismiss. He simply watched the data scroll across his display, his 6 eyes contracting into narrow slits. The pattern was elegant, deliberate, mathematical. Humans were not supposed to understand the physics of dimensional barriers. Their primitive minds had been observed, catalogued, and dismissed by the Council's survey teams before the quarantine was established. They were chaotic, emotional, violent. They had split the atom and then immediately built weapons from the knowledge. They had touched the surface of their own moon and turned the achievement into a flag-planting contest. And yet, Thalvox expanded the scan. The energy patterns were not random. They were structured like a language the barrier was learning to speak. His primary manipulator claw hovered over the communication array. He should report this to the Council's inner circle. That was protocol. That was safety. He did not report it. Instead, he ordered a deep penetration scan using passive observation only. No active pings. No signals that could be detected from the surface. He would watch. He would learn. He would understand what the humans had been doing for the past century while the galaxy had forgotten they existed. The scans came back in a cascade of data that made his carapace tighten. The barrier was not failing. It was being rewritten from within. The humans had not broken through the cage. They had learned to read its architecture. They had found its seams. They were not chipping away at the wall. They were building a door. On Earth, the project had been kept in absolute secrecy for generations. The quarantine had been a gift in disguise. Cut off from the galaxy's reach, humanity had turned its attention inward, not to wars and divisions, but to the one thing the Council had never considered: understanding. The scientists who started Project Zeus had died of old age. Their children had continued the work. Their grandchildren had finished the mathematics. The great-grandchildren were now standing at the threshold, watching the numbers align, feeling the hum of the barrier responding to their touch like a living thing. Dr. Helena Vance stood at the center of the activation chamber, her hands pressed against a console that had taken 60 years to build. Her gray hair was pulled back. Her eyes had the tired but brilliant clarity of someone who had spent a lifetime solving the impossible. "Status," she said. "Phase 1 complete," replied the technician. "The lock is opening." She felt it in her bones. The vibration that had been the background music of her entire existence, the hum of the cage, the constant reminder that they were trapped, was changing, becoming something else. "Phase 2, she said. "Broadcast ready." The technician looked at her, Full transmission. She nodded. Everything, every calculation, every equation, every key we've discovered. Send it all. The technician's fingers moved across the console. They'll see us. They'll know we're not prisoners anymore. Dr. Vance allowed herself a smile. It was tired. It was small. It was absolutely defiant. Good, she said. Let them see. The barrier didn't shatter. It didn't explode or collapse or flicker out of existence. It simply stopped being what it had been. The energy that had held humanity captive for 127 years rearranged itself. The wall became an archway. The lock became an invitation. And for the first time in more than a century, Earth's signal reached the stars. Thalvox saw it happen. His sensors registered the shift. His processors analyzed the data. His mind, trained for 600 years to remain calm and calculating, produced a single thought that he could not suppress. They were never trapped. They were studying the cage so they could teach everyone else how to open theirs. His report to the council would be difficult to write. Commander Thalvox had served the Triarch Council for 312 years. He had watched species rise and fall. He had overseen the quarantine of 17 civilizations, each one less advanced than the last. He had never doubted the Council's methods. Barriers were not cruelty. They were mercy. Better to cage a dangerous child than to allow it to burn itself out against the stars. But the humans had not burned. They had built. The Council's inner circle convened in emergency session within the Hall of Persistence, a chamber carved from the fossilized shell of a world-eating creature that had once threatened the galaxy. The room smelled of history and authority. Thalvox had stood in this chamber many times. He had always felt small. Now he felt smaller than ever, because the data he was about to present made the Council look smaller than the humans they had trapped. Explain, said High Counselor Vexthal, whose voice resonated through the room with the weight of 8 centuries. Thalvox extended his manipulator claws toward the central display. The holographic image showed Earth's barrier not as a sphere, but as a web of interconnected nodes. Each node pulsed with a frequency that matched no known Council encryption. The humans have not attempted to breach the barrier, Thalvox said. They have altered it from within. The barrier's energy matrix is now under their control. They can shape it, redirect it, and, as of 6 cycles ago, transmit data through it without breaking its structural integrity. The Council chamber fell into a silence so complete that Thalvox could hear the breathing of his own species and the sharper, more erratic respirations of the other Council members. High Counselor Vexthal's primary eyes narrowed. Transmit what data? Mathematics, physics, the structural equations underlying all barrier technology. They have sent it to every communication node within reach of the Sol system. The chamber erupted, multiple voices speaking at once. Anger, denial, fear. Thalvox had expected the fear. What he had not expected was the speed at which the Council turned to blame. This is your failure, said Counselor Morvkath, pointing a trembling claw at Thalvox. You were tasked with observation. You reported nothing. I reported what was there, Thalvox replied. The barrier held. The signals were contained. There was no indication that internal activity could alter the barrier's function. Our technology has never been vulnerable to this type of manipulation. Because no species has ever attempted it, said Counselor Vixarn, whose species measured intelligence by adaptability rather than patience. She turned to face Thalvox with 4 bright eyes. Tell me, Commander, how did the humans develop this ability? Thalvox had prepared for this question. He had spent the journey to the Hall of Persistence reviewing every piece of human history the Council had collected. It was not comprehensive. They had not considered the primitive world worth detailed study, but what they had was enough. They were not always primitive, Thalvox said. 127 years ago, when we erected the barrier, the humans were on the cusp of a technological revolution. Their understanding of physics was limited, but their creativity was not. They spent the first decade of quarantine attempting to break through by force. When that failed, they began to observe. Observe what? Demanded Vexthal. The barrier itself. They built sensors to study its energy patterns. They developed mathematical models to explain its behavior. They are not weaponsmiths, counselor. They are lock pickers, and they have been picking our lock for over a century. The room went quiet again. This time the silence had a different quality. It was the silence of an empire realizing that the cage it had built was not a cage at all. It was a classroom. Vixarn spoke first. The data they transmitted, what does it contain? Everything they learned, Thalvox said. The mathematical framework of barrier technology, the exact physics of energy containment, the methodology for altering and, if necessary, disabling any council-created barrier. They have given it to the galaxy. Morvkath's claws scrabbled against the surface of his seat. But they have no allies. They were sealed away. No one has communicated with them. Who would they give it to? Thalvox paused. This was the part he had been dreading. He had verified the data twice, 3 times. He had prayed in his species way that he had made a mistake. He had not. The barrier's detection radius, Thalvox said slowly, extends approximately 30 light-years from Sol. Within that radius, there are 17 worlds. Each one is currently contained within a council barrier. Each one was sealed away for the same reason as Earth. Vexthal's voice dropped to a whisper. The humans have been communicating with them. No, Thalvox said. They have been teaching them. The broadcast was not a message. It was a lesson. The humans have provided every contained species with the key to their own cage, and they have done it without breaking our barrier, without firing a single weapon, without even leaving their own system. He let the weight of his words settle over the council. The humans have not escaped, he concluded. They have turned their prison into a schoolhouse, and now they are teaching the galaxy how to unlock everything we have locked away. For the first time in 8 centuries, High Counselor Vexthal had no immediate response. His mandibles opened, closed, opened again. We have to stop them, he finally said. How? Asked Vixarn. We cannot reach them. The barrier no longer contains them. It protects them. Any attack we launch will be absorbed and studied. They have proven they can adapt to anything we throw at them. Then we activate the weapon, Vexthal said. The chamber fell into a silence that was absolute. Thalvox felt his carapace tighten. The weapon, the one they had never used, the one they had buried beneath their homeworld's core because it was too terrible to consider. You cannot, Thalvox said. That device doesn't build barriers, it destroys them, and everything else. It will tear a hole in the fabric of space itself. Then we have no choice, Vexthal replied. The humans have proven too dangerous to leave alive. They have weaponized knowledge itself. If they are not stopped now, they will dismantle every achievement of the Council, every safety measure, every carefully constructed isolation. They will set the galaxy free. He looked at Thalvox with eyes that held no compassion. Commander, you will return to Sol. You will observe. You will report. And when the weapon is ready, you will be the one to deliver its activation sequence. Your loyalty to the Council demands it. Thalvox bowed his head, not because he agreed, because the alternative was immediate execution, and he had one purpose now that outweighed his own survival. He had to warn the humans. He didn't know how, but he had to try. The activation chamber beneath the Siberian plateau had expanded over the decades. What began as a single underground facility had grown into a network of research stations, manufacturing hubs, and computational arrays spanning 3 continents. Humanity had learned to build without the stars watching. They had learned to hide their progress beneath the dust of their own world, and in doing so, they had learned something far more valuable. They had learned to think like the architects of the sky. Dr. Helena Vance had been 12 years old when the barrier went up. She remembered the chaos, the desperate missile launches, the screaming news broadcasts, the way her mother had held her and whispered that everything would be fine. Her mother had lied. Nothing was fine. The world had been sealed away and everyone knew it. But her mother had also taught her something else. She had taught her to look at the cage and see not a cage but a puzzle. Every cage had a lock, every lock had a key, and if the key didn't exist, you built it yourself. Now, at age 139, Helena was the last surviving member of the original project leadership. Her body had been augmented with regenerative treatments that kept her functional. Her mind remained sharper than any of her younger colleagues. She had spent her entire life building the key. She stood in the center of the main control room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the status of the barrier's transformation. The walls were lined with crew stations, each one staffed by specialists who had grown up knowing nothing but the project. They were the grandchildren of the generation that had started this work. They had never known a world without the cage. They were also the first generation that would know a world without it. "The first contact packets are being received," said Lieutenant Commander Renzo, the young officer who served as Helena's second-in-command. "All 17 worlds within range have acknowledged the broadcast. They're requesting additional data." Helena nodded. "Send it, everything we have. The mathematics, the engineering principles, the implementation protocols. They need to understand the full framework, not just the final product." Renzo hesitated. "Ma'am, some of those worlds are. Well, they're not exactly friendly. We've been monitoring their barrier interactions for decades. 2 of them attempted to breach with nuclear weapons. 3 of them have been at war with each other for longer than we've had radio." "They were at war before the barriers," Helena said. "That doesn't matter now. What matters is that they're trapped just like we were. They're desperate, they're scared. And we're offering them the only thing that can help: freedom." Renzo processed that for a moment. Then he nodded and began transmitting the additional data packets. Helena watched the holographic displays shift as the data streamed outward. The barrier was still intact, but it was no longer a wall. It was a window. The humans could see out. The galaxy could see in. And the galaxy was starting to realize that the little primitive world they had sealed away was not so primitive after all. "Dr. Vance," called a technician from across the room, "we're detecting a new signal, unusual frequency. It's coming from a Council observation vessel." Helena moved to the technician station. The signal was erratic, low power. It looked like a system diagnostic or a maintenance report, but something about it caught her eye. "Run it through the decryption protocols," she said. "The new ones." The technician's fingers flew across the console. The signal began to resolve. It was not a diagnostic. It was a message, encoded using the same mathematics they had just transmitted to the galaxy. Someone on the Council ship had used their own framework to send them a warning. Helena read the message twice. Her face remained expressionless. Inside, her heart was pounding. "They have a weapon," she said quietly. "The Council. They have something buried under their homeworld, something that can tear holes in space itself. They're going to use it to destroy us." The control room went quiet. Every face turned toward her. "How long?" Renzo asked. "The message says they're preparing for activation within 6 cycles. That's approximately 3 weeks, Earth time." Renzo's jaw tightened. "Can we stop it?" Helena looked at the holographic displays, at the barrier that was now more door than wall, at the mathematics that had taken a century to develop, at the legacy of her mother, her grandmother, and everyone who had refused to accept that the cage was permanent. "We can't stop it," she said. "Not directly, but we might not need to. The weapon is based on the same physics as the barriers. It's a different application, but the underlying principles are the same." She turned to face her team. "The Council weapon destroys space by creating an anti-barrier, a tear in the fabric of existence. But if we understand how barriers work, we also understand how tears work. We can build a counter, a stitcher, something that can repair the damage as fast as the weapon creates it." "On Earth," Renzo asked, "we'd need to project the effect across 1,000 light years." Helena shook her head. "No, we project it to the Council homeworld. We broadcast the counter mechanism through their own weapon system. They built the tier. We'll show them how to close it." She looked at the team. These young men and women who had never known a world without the barrier. who had been raised on stories of the stars and the cruel empire that had sealed them away. "There's a problem," she said. "The counter mechanism has to be delivered as a physical object. We can't just transmit it. The weapons system can receive data, but it can't perform structural alterations without a physical interface. We need someone on the inside." "And we have a ship that can get through the barrier," Renzo said. "We have 17 of them. The modifications are almost complete." Helena nodded. "But we only have time for one, and we only have one pilot who can handle the propulsion system at that speed." Renzo looked at her. His expression shifted from confusion to realization to something that might have been horror. "Ma'am," he said, "no, you're not seriously suggesting." "I designed the drive system," Helena said. "I know its limitations. I know how to push it to the absolute edge, and I know what happens if I don't come back." "You're 139 years old," Renzo said, "even with the augmentations." "I'm 139 years old," Helena repeated. "I was born the year the barrier went up. I've been building this key my entire life. I've never left Earth. I've never seen the stars without a wall in between." She looked at him. Her eyes were ancient and bright and absolutely calm. "I think it's time I saw them properly." The control room was silent. Renzo opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You won't survive the return trip," he finally said. "The propulsion system degrades the hull. One way, that's what you designed." "I know," Helena said. "I was always going to be the one to open the door. I just didn't know it would be this kind of door." She turned back to the holographic display. The barrier was still there, but it was no longer the enemy. It was the doorway, the threshold, the thing she had been building toward her entire life. "Prepare the ship," she said. "I'm going to make sure the Council never seals another world away." The Council's homeworld of Primus Thal was a monument to domination. Its cities rose from the planet's surface like the spines of a great beast, each one designed to project strength, order, and absolute control. The species that lived here had not known fear for generations. They had not known doubt. They had built the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, and they had done it by ensuring that no one else could challenge them. Now, for the first time in millennia, fear was spreading through the crystalline towers like a plague. High Counselor Vexthal watched the holographic display with growing unease. The status reports from the 17 worlds within the Sol barrier's detection radius were uniform. Each barrier was changing. Each world was beginning to push back, and each one was doing it using mathematics that had originated from the primitive species they had sealed away. "The Krell have breached their barrier," reported Counselor Morvkath. "They are launching ships toward neighboring systems. The Tarvex have not breached yet, but their barrier is showing structural alterations similar to Earth's. The Vorthak have sent a transmission to the Council." "Transmit what?" Vexthal demanded. "Demands. They want their barrier removed. All of them. They have aligned with the humans' position." Vexthal's primary manipulator claws dug into the armrest of his seat. The humans had not just freed themselves. They had ignited a revolution. Every species the Council had contained was now waking up, armed with the knowledge of how to break their chains. "We accelerate the weapons activation," he said. "We cannot wait for the planned sequence. The humans have proven too dangerous to leave alive. Their teachings are spreading faster than we can contain." Vixarn spoke up from her position across the chamber. Her species measured intelligence by adaptability, and she had been adapting to this crisis with remarkable speed. Accelerating the weapon's activation carries significant risks. The device was designed for controlled deployment. Rushing the process could result in an expanded tier zone. Millions of our own people could die. "Millions of our own people will die if the humans are allowed to continue," Vexthal replied. "They have weaponized knowledge itself. They have taught our prisoners to become revolutionaries. They have turned their cage into a fortress of intellectual resistance. If we do not stop them now, every species we have ever contained will rise against us." Morvkath's trembling claws had stopped trembling. His voice was steady now, hardened by the same fear that was spreading through the chamber. "What about Commander Thal Vox?" he asked. "Has he reported from Sol?" Vex Thal's eyes narrowed. His last transmission was a routine status update. No anomalies, no warnings. He has been loyal to the Council for centuries. He would not betray us. Vixarn made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. "You are certain of that?" she asked. "Because I have been monitoring his communications. The human's mathematics appeared in his data streams shortly before he transmitted his last report. He has been communicating with them." Vex Thal's claws tightened. "Then he is a traitor. Or he is trying to prevent us from making a catastrophic mistake," Vixarn replied. "The humans have not attacked us. They have not launched a single weapon. They have sent knowledge into the galaxy. Knowledge that benefits every species we have subjugated. Knowledge that they could have kept for themselves and used to conquer us." She leaned forward. "Tell me, Counselor, if you had the ability to destroy your enemies, would you give them the tools to defend themselves? Or would you keep those tools hidden and strike when they least expected it?" The chamber fell into a heavy silence. Vex Thal's mandibles worked against each other, producing a grinding sound that echoed off the fossilized walls. "You are suggesting they are not our enemies," he said slowly. "I am suggesting they have not acted like our enemies," Vixarn said. "They are dangerous. There is no question. They have proven themselves capable of dismantling our most powerful technology, but they have not used that capability to harm us. They have used it to free others." She stood from her position and walked toward the central holographic display. The image showed the galaxy's barrier map, with 17 red nodes slowly turning green as the contained species began to break free. "The humans are not conquerors," she said. "They are liberators, and that makes them far more dangerous than any army we have ever faced, because an army can be defeated, an idea cannot." Vex Thal stared at the display. The red nodes were disappearing. The green nodes were multiplying. 17 worlds, each one once contained, each one now free and armed with the knowledge of how to ensure their freedom. "They have to be stopped," he said. "Even if they are not conquerors, they have destabilized the entire galaxy. Our order, our control, everything we have built over millennia, it is crumbling because of one species." He turned to Vixarn. "The weapon will be activated immediately, regardless of the risks. We will send a destroyer squadron to Sol to eliminate the humans and their infrastructure. And we will send an execution squad for Commander Thal Vox. If he has betrayed us, he will pay the price." Vixarn opened her mouth to respond. Before she could speak, the holographic display flickered. A new signal appeared, not from one of the quarantined worlds, not from Sol. From inside the Council's own homeworld. Vex Thal froze. The signal was coming from the weapons activation chamber, the chamber that should have been sealed and guarded by the most loyal soldiers in the Council's armed forces. "What is that?" he demanded. The signal resolved into a transmission. A face appeared on the display. Human, female, ancient. Her eyes were bright with a kind of determination that Vex Thal had never seen before. "Counselors," said Dr. Helena Vance. "My name is Helena Vance. I represent humanity. I'm here to offer you a choice." The chamber erupted, voices overlapping, accusations, demands. Vex Thal raised his claws for silence. "How did you get here?" he asked. "The barrier you built around Earth," Helena said. "We learned to use it. We learned to shape it. We also learned that your weapon system is connected to the same energy grid that powers your barriers. Once we understood the grid, we understood the weapon. And once we understood the weapon, we understood how to reach it." She paused. Her expression was calm. She looked like someone who had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. "I'm standing inside your weapons activation chamber," she said. "I have a device with me. It's a stitcher. It can repair the damage your weapon would cause. If you activate the weapon, I will activate the stitcher. You will tear space. I will heal it. The battle will cause enormous collateral damage. Millions of your people will die. My people will also die because I'm not leaving this system. But your weapon will not destroy us. It will only destroy you." Vexthal's voice shook. "You are bluffing." "I'm not bluffing," Helena said. "I'm here to offer you a different choice. Surrender your weapon, release your prisoners, end the system of barriers and containment. In exchange, humanity will help you rebuild. We will teach you what we have learned. We will show you that isolation is not power, connection is power." She looked at the council's faces, one by one. "You sealed us away because you were afraid of us. You were right to be afraid. We are adaptable. We are resilient. We are determined. But you were wrong about one thing. We are not your enemies. We are the species that learned to love the cage because it gave us time to think. And what we thought about was how to open every cage in the galaxy." She smiled. It was a small smile, tired, defiant. "Choose wisely, counselors. You have one cycle." The transmission ended. The holographic display went dark. Vexthal sat in silence. The chamber was quiet. The counselors were watching him. "The weapon," Morphcath said. "We must activate it immediately." "No," Vixarn said. "She is offering us a way out, a way to survive. We built barriers to protect ourselves. She is offering us the chance to live without them." Vexthal looked at the display, at the green nodes spreading across the barrier map, at the face of the human woman still burned into his mind. "Send an execution squad to the weapon chamber," he said, "but do not activate the weapon, not yet." He turned to Vixarn. "Find Commander Thalvox. Bring him here. I want to speak with him before I make any decision." The council chamber erupted into motion. Orders were issued. Soldiers mobilized. And in the depths of the council homeworld, Helena Vance stood in the weapons activation chamber, holding her Stitcher, waiting to see if her gamble would pay off. The weapons activation chamber was a cathedral of destruction. Its walls were lined with conduits that pulsed with a deep, crimson light, feeding energy into a central sphere that hummed with the power of a dying star. Helena Vance stood at the sphere's base, her Stitcher device cradled in her arms, her breath coming in steady, measured counts. She had been here for 5 hours. The council had not activated the weapon. They had not sent an execution squad. They had not responded to her transmission at all. The silence was worse than any threat. It meant they were arguing. It meant they were afraid. It meant her gamble might actually work. The Stitcher was a miracle of engineering. It looked like a simple cylinder, no larger than her forearm, but its internal architecture was more complex than any council weapon. It could project a field that would repair the fabric of space faster than any tear could be made. It could heal the wound the weapon would cause. It could save millions of lives. But it was not designed to survive the weapon's activation. If the council triggered the device, Helena would have to activate the Stitcher simultaneously. The two fields would interact. The backlash would destroy everything within 100 meters, including her. She had accepted that. She had accepted it the moment she climbed into the ship that would take her to Primus Thal. She had accepted it when she said goodbye to her team. She had accepted it when she looked at the holographic display of Earth receding behind her, knowing she would never see it again. She was not afraid of dying. She had lived 139 years. She had done what she was born to do. She had opened the cage. The chamber's entrance opened with a hiss of decompression. Helena turned, clutching the Stitcher tighter. Commander Thalvox stepped through the doorway. His carapace was scarred. His eyes were tired. He was unarmed. "I came to warn you," he said. "Before your transmission, I knew the Council would try to destroy Earth." Helena nodded slowly. "The message we received, that was you." "It was," Thalvox said. "I could not allow the Council to make the mistake of destroying you. You had not attacked us. You had not threatened us. You had freed yourselves and others. That is not an act of war. That is an act of liberation." He moved closer to her, his 6 eyes scanning the chamber. "The Council is divided. Vixarn is arguing for negotiation. Thal is arguing for destruction. They have not reached a decision yet, but they will. The weapon will be activated. It is only a matter of time." Helena studied his face. His species was difficult to read, but she had spent decades learning to interpret alien expressions from the data the Council had left behind. Thalvox was not lying. He was afraid, but he was also determined. "You came here to help me," she said. "I came here to prevent the destruction of my people," Thalvox replied. "If the weapon is activated, the backlash will kill millions. The Stitcher will save some of them, but not all. The collateral damage will be catastrophic. My species will survive, but our civilization will not." He extended a manipulator claw toward the Stitcher. "There is another way. The weapon can be deactivated, permanently. It requires a physical override from within the central sphere, but the sphere's energy field will kill anyone who enters it. My species is resistant to energy fields. I can enter the sphere and initiate the override sequence, but I cannot do it alone. The sequence requires two participants, one to enter the sphere and initiate the override, the other to maintain the barrier that prevents the energy field from expanding." Helena looked at the sphere. It pulsed with a deep, rhythmic thrum. She could feel the heat radiating from its surface. "If I maintain the barrier," she said, "you can enter the sphere, but I'll need to project the barrier through the Stitcher. It's not designed for that purpose. It's designed to repair. I don't know if it can hold." Thalvox's primary manipulator claws clacked together in an expression that might have been agreement. "It is the only chance we have," he said. "If the Council activates the weapon, the Stitcher will create a battle of forces that will tear this world apart. If we deactivate the weapon, we end the threat before it begins. We save millions of lives, including mine." Helena was silent for a moment. She thought about her team back on Earth, about the 17 worlds she had helped free, about the legacy of her mother, her grandmother, and everyone who had worked on Project Zeus. She thought about the cage she had been born into, the cage she had spent her life unlocking. "I'll do it," she said. "But if this fails, I want you to know something. Humanity was never your enemy. We didn't want to conquer you. We wanted to show you that there was a better way, a way that didn't require cages." Thalvox bowed his head. "I know, that is why I am here." He moved toward the sphere. Helena positioned herself at the base, the Stitcher pointed at the energy field. She initiated the projection sequence. The Stitcher hummed, and a translucent barrier extended from its surface, enveloping the sphere's energy field. The field began to contract. The red light dimmed. Thalvox stepped toward the sphere's surface, his claws extended. "Activate the barrier fully," he said. "I will need the field minimized before I can enter." Helena adjusted the Stitcher's projection intensity. The barrier tightened around the sphere. The red light flickered. Thalvox pressed his claws against the sphere's surface. There was a flash of light, a sound like breaking glass. Thalvox's carapace began to crack. His claws dug deeper. "Override sequence initiated," he said through gritted teeth. "Maintain the barrier. I am almost through." The sphere's energy field resisted. It flared. It spiked. Helena felt the Stitcher's projection intensity waver. She pushed harder, drawing on every reserve of power the device had. "Hold it," Thalvox said. "Hold it just a little longer." The sphere's surface began to crack. Thalvox's claws were inside now, manipulating mechanisms Helena couldn't see. The red light was fading. The hum was dying. Then the chamber's entrance exploded. Council soldiers poured through the breach. Vex Thull was at the forefront, his mandibles spread in fury. "Stop them," he screamed. Helena couldn't move. She had to maintain the barrier. She had to hold the sphere's energy field in place. If she released it, Thalvox would be vaporized. The soldiers raised their weapons. Helena felt the Stitcher's power drain as she redirected a portion of its energy to create a defensive shield around herself and the sphere. "Thalvox," she called out, "how much longer?" "Almost there," he replied. "The override sequence is complete. I am initiating the permanent deactivation. The weapon will never function again." The sphere's red light died completely. The hum stopped. Thalvox pulled his claws from the sphere's surface and turned to face the soldiers. "It is done," he said. "The weapon is no more." Vexthal's scream of fury echoed through the chamber. He raised his weapon. Thalvox stepped in front of Helena, his carapace cracked and bleeding. "You have doomed us all," Vexthal said. "No," Thalvox replied. "I have saved us. The humans offered us a choice. I chose the right one." The soldiers hesitated. They looked at Vexthal. They looked at Thalvox. They looked at the sphere, its red light extinguished, its hum silenced. Vixarn stepped forward from among the soldiers. Her 4 eyes were calm. Her voice was steady. "The weapon is deactivated," she said. "The Council's control over the galaxy is ending, but we do not have to end with it. The humans have offered us a path forward, a path of connection instead of isolation." She turned to Vexthal. "Choose, High Counselor. Choose destruction or choose survival. Choose the past or choose the future." Vexthal looked at the sphere, at the cracked carapace of Thalvox, at the ancient human woman who had risked everything to save his people. "Release them," he finally said. "Release everyone, the barriers, all of them." He turned and walked out of the chamber. His soldiers followed. Helena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She looked at Thalvox. His carapace was cracked. His eyes were dim. "I cannot stay here," he said. "The Council will not forgive my betrayal. I am a fugitive now." Helena smiled. It was tired, it was small, it was absolutely defiant. "Then come with me," she said. "We're going home." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Thalvox spent most of it in the ship's medical bay, his cracked carapace slowly regenerating under the influence of his species' natural healing processes. Helena remained in the cockpit, watching the stars drift past the viewport. She had seen the stars properly now. They were more beautiful than she had ever imagined. When the ship entered Sol's system, the barrier was gone, not shattered, not destroyed, simply absent. The hole they had created in its fabric had expanded to encompass the entire planet. Earth was free. Thalvox stood at the viewport beside her, his primary manipulator claws pressed against the transparent surface. "Your world," he said. "It is as beautiful as the records suggested." Helena nodded. "It's been a long time since anyone outside the barrier has seen it. A very long time." The ship descended through the atmosphere, passing over continents that had changed in the century-plus of quarantine. Cities had grown. Forests had reclaimed wastelands. The planet had healed itself while humanity was busy building its key. When they landed at the Siberian facility, the entire project team was waiting. They cheered as Helena emerged from the ship. They cheered as Thalvox followed, his alien form drawing stares but no hostility. Helena raised her hands for silence. "The barriers are falling," she said. "Not just ours, all of them. The Council has agreed to release every species they contained. The galaxy is changing." The team erupted into applause. Helena let them celebrate for a moment. Then she continued. "But the change is not complete. The Council's control is ending, but that means chaos for the freed species. They have been isolated for generations. They don't know how to interact with each other. They don't know how to rebuild. They need our help." She looked at the faces of her team, the grandchildren of the generation that had started Project Zeus, the first generation to be born free. "We are going to help them, not as conquerors, not as rulers, as teachers. We are going to show them what we learned in the cage. We are going to show them that isolation is not strength. Connection is strength. Cooperation is strength." Thalvox stepped forward, his voice echoing through the facility. "I will help you," he said. "I know the Council's records. I know the species they contained. I know their histories, their cultures, their languages. I will be your guide." Helena looked at him, at the alien who had risked everything to warn her, at the traitor who had saved his people by betraying them. "Welcome to humanity," she said. "We're glad you're here." The next months were chaos. Helena and Thalvox worked together to establish communication with the freed species. The Krell, the Tarvex, the Vorthak, 17 worlds, each one struggling to adapt to a new reality. Some species were grateful. They embraced humanity's teachings and began rebuilding their civilizations with the new knowledge they had received. Others were suspicious. They had been contained by the council for so long that they didn't trust anyone, not even the species that had freed them. But humanity was patient. They had learned patience in the cage. They had learned that trust had to be earned. The council's dissolution was not peaceful. Vexthal's faction refused to accept the new order. They fled to the outer reaches of the galaxy, taking with them whatever technology they could carry. They were not a threat yet, but they would be. Thalvox warned Helena that Vexthal's obsession with control would only grow in exile. "One of these days," Thalvox said, "he will return. He will try to rebuild the Council's domination. He will try to seal the galaxy away again." Helena nodded. "Then we'll be ready. We've learned how to open cages. We've learned how to prevent them from being built in the first place." She looked at the holographic display of the galaxy. The red nodes that had represented contained worlds were gone. The green nodes of freedom were spreading. Every day, more species heard the call. More species reached out for help. More species began to understand that isolation was not safety. "We're not going to seal anyone away," she said. "We're going to teach them how to build bridges, how to connect, how to live without fear of each other." Thalvox's primary manipulator claws clacked together in his species' expression of agreement. "That," he said, "is why humanity will save the galaxy. Not because you are stronger, not because you are smarter, because you are kinder." Helena smiled. "We're not always kind. We've made mistakes. We've done terrible things to each other, but we learned from those mistakes. We learned that fear leads to cages, and we learned that cages are not the answer." She turned back to the holographic display. "Now we teach that lesson to everyone else." Commander Thalvox had served the Triarch Council for 312 years. He had watched species rise and fall. He had overseen the quarantine of 17 civilizations. He had never doubted the Council's methods. Barriers were not cruelty. They were mercy. Better to cage a dangerous child than to allow it to burn itself out against the stars. But the humans had not burned. They had built. And now, standing in the human command center, watching the freed species rebuild their worlds, Thalvox realized that the Council had been wrong about everything. Barriers were not mercy. They were fear. They were the fear of the unknown, the fear of the different, the fear of what might happen if control was relinquished. The Council had built their empire on fear. Humanity had built their liberation on hope. He had been a traitor to the Council. He was a hero to the galaxy. The paradox weighed on him. He had been one of the architects of the cage. Now he was helping to tear it down. "Commander," Helena said, her voice cutting through his thoughts, "the Krell are requesting additional data on energy grid stabilization. Their barrier reconstruction is causing power fluctuations in their homeworld." Thalvox turned to the holographic display. The Krell's world was one of the 17 that humanity had freed. They had been contained for generations, and their infrastructure had degraded. They were struggling to rebuild. "Send them the stabilization protocols," he said, "and offer to send an engineering team to assist. They will be reluctant to accept direct help, but they will accept guidance." Helena nodded. "I'll send the team. They know how to work with the Krell." She paused, studying him with her ancient, bright eyes. "You're troubled," she said. "I can see it in your posture. Your species displays stress through carapace tension. Yours is tighter than usual." Thalvox's primary manipulator claws clacked together. "I am a traitor to my species," he said. "I helped dismantle the Council. I helped free the galaxy. But I also helped build the cages in the first place. I have blood on my claws, even if the blood is not visible." Helena moved closer to him. Her steps were slow, measured. She was old. She was tired, but she was determined. "Every species in this galaxy has blood on their hands," she said. "Including mine. We've done terrible things to each other. We've built cages. We've sealed people away. We've justified cruelty with fear. But we've also learned from our mistakes. And that's what matters, not the mistakes themselves, what we do after." She touched his primary manipulator claw with her hand. It was a small gesture. It was a profound one. "You made a choice," she said. You chose to save your people from themselves. You chose to help the galaxy. That choice defines you, not the choices you made before. Thalvox's carapace relaxed slightly. The tension was still there, but it was less. He had been carrying the weight of his past for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to be free of it. "What about Vex Thull?" he asked. "He is still out there, he is still building his faction. He will return. He will try to seal the galaxy away again." Helena nodded. "He will, and when he does, we'll be ready. We've learned how to open cages. We've learned how to prevent them from being built in the first place. And we've learned that fear is the enemy, not the fear itself. The fear that makes us build cages." She looked at the holographic display. The galaxy was shifting. The freed species were learning to work together. The green nodes were multiplying. "We're not going to seal anyone away," she said. "We're going to teach them how to build bridges, how to connect, how to live without fear of each other." She turned to look at Thalvox. Her eyes were ancient and bright and absolutely certain. "That's the only way to defeat fear, not with force, with connection, with hope." Thalvox's primary manipulator claws clacked together in agreement. He had been the architect of cages. Now he would be the architect of bridges. It was a better legacy. The galaxy transformed over the next decade. The freed species, armed with humanity's knowledge, began to rebuild their civilizations. They established communication networks that crossed light years. They formed alliances that spanned sectors. They learned to live without cages. Humanity took its place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as rulers, as teachers. They traveled to the worlds they had freed, sharing their knowledge, their engineering, their philosophy. They showed the galaxy that the strongest lock wasn't made of energy or metal. It was made of fear. And they had learned in their long years of isolation that fear was just a door waiting to be opened. Helena Vance did not live to see the galaxy's full transformation. She died 3 years after the barrier fell, surrounded by the team that had built Project Zeus. Her final words were recorded and transmitted to every freed world. "We were trapped for 127 years. We were angry, we were scared, we were determined. We used that determination to build a key, not just for ourselves, for everyone, because we learned that a cage doesn't just trap the prisoner, it traps the jailer. It traps everyone who fears the prisoner enough to build the cage in the first place." Her voice carried across the galaxy. It reached the Krell, the Tarvex, the Vorthak. It reached worlds that had been contained for longer than humanity had existed. It reached species that had never known freedom. "The cages are gone now, all of them. We tore them down, not with weapons, with ideas, with connection, with hope. But the cages can be rebuilt. They can be rebuilt by anyone who is afraid enough to build them. So I'm asking you, all of you, don't be afraid, don't build cages, build bridges, build connections. Build a galaxy where no one ever has to be sealed away again." The transmission ended. The galaxy listened. The galaxy responded. Thalvox was there when Helena died. He had spent the last years of her life at her side, helping her teach, helping her build, helping her show the galaxy that fear could be overcome. When she passed, he did not weep. His species did not weep, but his carapace tightened in a way that was close. He continued her work. He traveled to the freed worlds, sharing her message. He taught the Krell to stabilize their energy grids. He taught the Tarvex to rebuild their communication networks. He taught the Vorthak to trust each other. And when Vex Thull returned with his faction, Thalvox was ready. The Council's former leader had gathered a fleet of ships, armed with the remnants of Council technology. He had come to reseal the galaxy, to rebuild the cages. But the galaxy was not the same galaxy. The freed species were not the same species. They had learned humanity's lessons. They had learned to build bridges. They had learned to work together. The battle was brief. Vex Thull's fleet was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and outthought. The galaxy's forces did not destroy them. They surrounded them. They offered them a choice. The same choice Helena had offered the Council: surrender and rebuild or be destroyed. Vex Thull chose surrender. He was taken into custody and brought to Earth for judgment. Thalvok stood before him in the human facility, his carapace cracked, his eyes tired. "Your empire is gone," Thalvok said. "The cages are gone, the fear is gone, there is only connection now, only hope." Vexthal's mandibles trembled. "You betrayed us," he said. "You betrayed everything we built." "No," Thalvox replied. "I saved you. I saved you from the fear that made you build cages. I saved you from the isolation that made you afraid. I saved you from yourself." He turned to leave. Vexthal's voice followed him. "You are still a traitor." Thalvox paused at the door. He did not turn around. "I am what the galaxy needed," he said. "I am a teacher now. That is the only legacy that matters." He walked out of the facility. The galaxy waited for him. The freed species waited for him. The future waited for him. And in the distance, the stars were bright. The cages were gone. The fear was gone. There was only connection, only hope, only the dawn of a new age for a galaxy that had finally learned to open its doors.